Welcome to a candidate forum featuring candidates for the proposed Arden Arcade City Council. I am Kathy Souza, a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be the moderator this evening. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission. The forum is being viewed live by an audience at the Sacramento Association of Realtors. It is being taped for rebroadcast on Metro Cable Channel 14. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League of Women Voters does not oppose or evaluate candidates or parties. Although our nonpartisan policy does not permit endorsement of political candidates, we do, after careful study, take positions on political issues. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make an opening statement. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our panel. The questions were submitted by the panelists and reviewed by League members. Each candidate will then have 1 minute to respond to a question. Finally, the candidates will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Now, because we have such a large number of candidates here this evening, not all candidates will get to answer a particular question. We're going to rotate the questions between 6 sets of candidates at a time. In the interest of time and decorum, I ask the audience to please hold all applause and comments until the end of our forum, and please silence your cell phones. And now I would like to introduce the candidates who are running for the proposed City of Arden Arcade City Council. Starting from my right, Robin Slater, Matt Powers, Nathan Goff, Ryan Arba, Will Wright, Mary Ossie, Jay Boatwright, Liz Rice, Anthony Hernandez, Gerald Kloss, Carl Burton, Joel Archer, Patricia Cole, Bob Stevens, Warren Harding, and David Pagos. Thank you all for participating tonight. Sitting on our panel of questioners are Cosmo Garvin from the Sacramento News and Review and Robert Lewis from the Sacramento Bee. Thank you both for participating tonight. And so now we're ready to begin, and we'll start with opening statements from each candidate. Beginning with Ms. Salter.
Salter. That's okay. Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County for sponsoring this event and for giving... what?
Louder.
Maybe get closer to the microphone.
Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County for sponsoring this event and for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I've spent my entire life helping and serving my community. As a psychologist, I help people make positive changes in their lives. I worked with families of terminally ill children. I've worked with teenage mothers. I've worked with incarcerated women, and I currently work with our veterans who are returning home from the wars. I volunteered to teach physicians how to detect and report abuse. I taught teenage mothers how to bond with their children, and have worked with Habitat for Humanity to restore someone's home. I have chosen to run for City Council because I believe my varied experience, along with my highly developed problem-solving skills, will be of value when Arden Arcade becomes a city. As a candidate, I have signed a pledge not to spend over $1,000 during my campaign, and I believe that it reveals my commitment to you to be as careful with your money as I am with mine.
Thank you. Mr. Powers?
Good evening. My name is Matt Powers. I'm a 37-year resident of the Arden Arcade area, having graduated from Mariloma High School. I'm a grandfather and a father, and my family lives in this area, and I'm concerned for their safety. I'm also a retired deputy police chief with the city of Sacramento, and with my law enforcement expertise, I'm presently instructing young officers as a public safety instructor. My concerns in this area are manifold, But in particular, our sheriff has made it very clear to us that he has lost the ability to provide proactive law enforcement capabilities. We have a very large number of parolees, registered sex offenders, registered arsonists, and other folks who need policing. By becoming a city, we can restore policing to our community and make it a safer, cleaner place to live. Thank you.
Mr. Goff?
Good evening. I'm Nathan Goff. I'm an engineer with the State Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery. I have no prior political experience, but I do feel that my problem-solving orientation as an engineer, as well as my 20-plus years in public service with the state, working with local governments on various issues from solid waste, infrastructure, roadways, and that type of thing, has given me the background that I think will be very useful in performing as a city council member. I've also been involved in some business development activities through my position with the state. And I'm running because I want to try to provide some leadership in the development and the formation of the city of Arden Arcade. Thank you.
Mr. Arba?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting our candidate forum tonight. My name is Ryan Arba, and I'm a former high school teacher who knows that safety is important to a thriving community. I'm running for city council because I want to ensure that our new city is built upon a foundation, one that ensures safe neighborhoods, clean streets, and a thriving business community. I'm proud to have the endorsements of the Sacramento County Deputy Sheriff's Association, working families, and individual members of the community who know that I will advocate for their safety, families, and our future. I hold a Master's of Public Administration, and I have professional experience in the nonprofit, private, and public sectors. If elected, I will use my education and experience to create a brighter future for Arden Arcade. As your council member, I will make every decision for our new city based on one criterion: what's in the best interest for our future? My wife and I decided to buy our first home in Arden Arcade, and we hope to someday raise our family here. My priority will be to set up our new city not only to solve our immediate needs, but to be a sustainable city for your future.
Mr. Wright?
Hi, my name is Will Wright, and I'm running for City Council because I believe that we should serve our communities. My family has a tradition of serving. I was in the Marine Corps. My daughter right now is serving in Iraq. I have family members serving in the Army, Navy, and Air Force as we speak. My brother's a sheriff. And I think it's important that we serve our communities. I managed 4 projects for the state of California, one of which was critical to the budget. I worked at the state capitol where I negotiated bills with lobbyists, government officials, and businessmen. My present position, I was a manager of the U.S. Census where we counted all the residents of Sacramento County. I have the education experience and problem-solving abilities to help Arden Arcade get off to good standing, and I think that I would like to see this as a great place to live. Again, my name is Will Wright.
Ms. Ossie?
Good evening. I'm Mary Ossie, and I want to thank you all for your interest in good government and for participating in government. I'm interested in seeing Arden Arcade become a city because I've lived here most of my life, for approximately 40 years. It's always been a wonderful place for me, for my family, for my neighbors and friends. Most of my family lives here today. I'm in business, I'm a business person, and what I excel at most is getting things done. I know how to find out what we need to do, how to locate the resources, to how to hire the people, how to identify priorities and move forward with a plan. I would like to see Arden Arcade be all that it can be. It's a wonderful place. We're suffering right now from a lack of public safety. We're suffering from poor economic conditions in general, but in Arden Arcade, just drive down the street and you'll see it. I know how to change this. I'm interested in more officers on the street, more jobs, better streets to begin with. I have numerous endorsements, including Sheriff McGinnis and the Deputy Sheriff's Association, members of the local business community, and lots of people just like us.
Mr. Boatwright?
Good evening. My name is Jay Boatwright. I'm a 28-year resident of the Arden Arcade area. I'm married. I have 2 daughters, both who graduated from El Camino High School and have gone on to university education. I'm also a 27-year member of Rotary, serving as past president. I've served on the Arden Arcade Community Planning Advisory Council back in the late 80s, early 90s. and I currently serve on the San Juan Unified School District Facilities, Transportation, and Finance Committee, and I was a chair for 2 years. I'm a private businessman. I know about making a payroll. I know about planning. I know about budgets. I will bring a business perspective to the Arden Arcade City Council. I support conservative fiscal policies. We have to live within our budget. Public safety has to be our #1 priority. We need more police on the streets and more code enforcement. Please visit my website at jboatwright.com. Thank you.
Ms. Rice?
Good evening. My name is Liz Rice. I'm a homemaker, a community activist, and a fitness professional. I, with my husband of 25 years, have raised our 4 children here who also graduated from El Camino High School. Over the past 5 to 10 years, I've become completely frustrated and discouraged with the decline of our community. In particular, the significant decrease of law enforcement protection, code enforcement, and the large increase of massage parlors in our community. In the last 6 months alone, 2 massage parlors have opened up, less than a mile from my home and just blocks from El Camino High School. With each new one of these parlors that opens, with no resistance from our current government, I see our community decline just that much more. I see no reason why we have a single massage parlor in our community, and if elected, I would author and support an ordinance to ban completely massage parlors from our city. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for this forum and opportunity. I'm Anthony Hernandez, and I'm running for City Council for Arden Arcade. A yes vote on Measure D will allow cityhood, and that will provide us, the neighbors of Arden Arcade, the opportunity to take control and charge of our future. I have much experience and leadership from working with 2 governors, 2 mayors, a city council on local government issues. In addition, for several years I've been working, serving the Arden Arcade on Arden Arcade's local planning and land use commission. There I've been able to help families invest in their projects for their homes or businesses in our community. I've also been able to stop bad projects in our communities like cell phone towers or other things that are eyesores, a dangerous halfway house that would have brought felons into our community. I also think that through Measure D, we'll have the opportunity to elect 7 of our local neighbors that will have the opportunity to shape the future of our community. Thank you.
Mr. Klass?
Good evening. My name is Gerald Kloss. I'm a computer security consultant. I grew up in Carmichael, went to Jesuit High School, American River College, and have a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Cal State Sacramento. My wife and I purchased our home in Arden Arcade 8 years ago. I ran for the California State Senate in 1998 on the Libertarian ticket. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm running because I believe in citizen government. And I'm very heartened to see the participation that we have 22 candidates running for city council here. That says something about our community. And when I first took out my nomination papers, I was undecided on Measure D. But since then, I've looked through the LAFCO reports, and I'm convinced that as a city, we can do better. We can have more police, we can have better code enforcement, and we can take better control of the zoning in the area. So I think that we will have a better community, and I urge you to vote yes on Measure D.
Mr. Burton?
Hi, my name is Carl Burton, and I'm running for the Arden Arcade City Council because I've lived in the community for over 20 years, and I want to maintain its strengths and help lay the groundwork for a new city in our community. I want a better place to live and raise our family. I will work to help to revitalize our community, and my top priorities will be to have better police protection in our area and revitalize our business community. As a full-time city council person, I will only take $1 a year in salary, and as your councilman, I will make sure that we have open and transparent government. I want to thank you for your vote, and again, my name is Carl Burton.
Mr. Archer?
Hello, thank you, League of Women Voters, for doing this. My name is Joel Archer. I'm the past chair of the Arden Arcade Incorporation Committee. I'm the crazy guy that's been heading this up for the last 4 years, and have woken up each and every day testing cityhood and believing that cityhood is good for our community, and believe this is the greatest opportunity we may ever see as a community. I came and got involved as a young business owner. I am a business owner. I went to El Camino High School, American River College, Sac State, graduated finance and investing. To open my business, I work, live, and go to church all in Arden Arcade, and have seen and witnessed what a community can do. The last 4 years I have studied Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova, seen the possibilities and the opportunities for a community, and firmly believe without a shadow of a doubt that Arden Arcade can be one of the most thriving communities in the Sacramento area. And honestly, I'd just like to be a part of the leadership team to help see that. Thank you.
Ms. Cole?
Hi, I'm Patricia Cole, and like a lot of other folks here, I've lived in Arden Arcade a long time, 36 years, raised our family here. I'm familiar with the issues, and I also served on the incorporation committee, so I have a lot of depth when it comes to knowing what we can do and what we want, what we should be doing in the future. I also have a strong business background. I worked at SMUD, planning and implementing energy programs and working in management on budgets and managing large budgets, large staff, and building and planning programs. Another interest of mine is sustainability because of that career at SMUD, and I would like to bring some of that expertise to my place in the City Council. My priorities are a lot like everyone else's. I think we all agree that public safety is critical. Right now we have about a 7-minute response time for police calls, and the standard that I'd like to see is a 4-minute response time, or even less if we could do it. I'd like cleaner neighborhoods too, and also cleaner businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
My name's Bob Stevens. I've lived in Arden Arcade for approximately 37 years. I've raised one grown child here and have grandchildren. I am currently raising 2 teenagers in my house, one being my niece, and that's a chore at 60 years old, believe me. I am a retired sheriff's lieutenant, 31 years with the Sheriff's Department. I moved here from the East Coast to join the Sheriff's Department, go to their academy. I think it's one of the finest law enforcement agencies in the nation. It has been devastated. Our community is hurting very much from the cuts that have come about. I was a watch commander here. I've done budgets here. I've last 5 years on my tenure in the Sheriff's Department, I was the exec lieutenant for field services, detectives, and patrol. And I have done budgets and so forth in that area. My expertise is how law enforcement works and in some cases doesn't work and what Arden Arcade needs. Thank you.
Mr. Harding?
Hi, my name is Warren Harding, and I'm proud to be here with these 22 candidates volunteering their time and service. I've lived in Arden Arcade for 41 years and served as your local parks district's director for 32 years. I've built 3 new community parks, founded our neighborhood association, and served as president of the Sacramento County Management Association. If the citizens of Arden Arcade choose to be a new city, I want to help make that happen. I'm endorsed by the former Sacramento County Supervisor, Isla Collins, and the Sacramento County Deputy Sheriff's Association, as well as the Sacramento Labor Council. I believe in Arden Arcade. As your parks director and community leader, I've seen what we can do when we work together. As your new city council member, I will listen to you and focus on cracking down on crime and violence in our neighborhood by increasing the number of law enforcement patrols to previous levels and above, reducing traffic congestion, repairing our roads, protecting our parks and parkway, supporting our schools without increasing taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Pagos?
Hi, my name is David Pagos, and thank you all for being here tonight. Really appreciate it, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the Sacramento Cable for being here as well. I'm a lifelong resident here, born and raised here. I went to Cowan Elementary School, Churchill Junior High, and Mariloma High School. I feel I have a good understanding of the community. I also have my family here as well, and I have a little 1.5-year-old daughter that we're raising here in the community. There's 3 basic things that I'm going to be focusing on if I'm given the opportunity to represent this great community. One is public safety, and I have some ideas on public safety I'd like to share with you. Code enforcement is another important aspect of making sure our community is upstanding and a safe community. And then finally, holding the line on taxes, promising that no new taxes would be involved in this incorporation. I know there's concerns over new taxes in this incorporation. I just want to assure you that we'll do all we can to make sure we do not raise taxes and keep the fiscal line. So we really appreciate everyone's time today and really look forward to an exciting debate tonight. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's start with questions from our panelists. Let's begin with Mr. Garvin. And the first person to answer will be Ms. Salter. The first six.
Ms. Salter, the proposed city of Arden Arcade would seem to lack some of the room to grow that other new cities like Elk Grove enjoy. I wonder if that affects the long-term viability of the city and what you would propose to make sure that Arden Arcade is economically viable and sustainable into the future.
Ms. Salter?
Thank you. That's a good question. The importance of getting new businesses and maintaining our tax base is paramount. You're right, we don't have room to grow, but we can enhance and increase our tax base. We can do that by getting new stores into the Country Club Plaza. We can revitalize Fulton Avenue. And so the way that we can maintain our viability, although the LAFCO report has indicated that we will be viable for at least 10 years, is to continue to get new businesses into Arden Arcade. Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
I would concur. We don't have a lot of undeveloped land. We're fully built out. At the same time, there is tremendous opportunity for improvement. Like the city of Citrus Heights, we have comparable square miles, comparable population, and yet they have demonstrated unequivocally that you can be a very healthy, vibrant city without a lot of new development.
Mr. Goff?
I would say the thing is we do have significant commercial corridors within Arden Arcade. I think as a city council or as a city, what we should look at is some type of enterprise zone or commercial corridor development zones along our commercial corridors where we could give incentives, zoning, variances, tax incentives, things that the city can offer to bring businesses in, and hopefully through that process attract new business and improve the businesses that are there.
Mr. Arba?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that I don't believe that it's sustainable for a city to be dependent on developer fees in order to for its long-term health and success. With that, I would, as a council member, I would look to use redevelopment laws as our new city to attract new businesses in, redevelop the areas where we currently have blight, to redevelop our city.
Mr. Wright?
I'd like to see a restaurant and entertainment corridor along the Watt Avenue, El Camino area. I think that would bring restaurants and bring entertainment into our Arden Arcade. There's a lot of entertainment downtown, but nothing here. And I think that with that, we'll bring more of a vibrant nightlife. I would also say that if we cut regulations and cut some of the red tape and make it where businesses want to come here, then they'll come here and it'll increase our tax base. It'll bring more money into the city, and we can do more. We can do more with less regulation.
Ms. Ossie?
I concur with a lot of the things that have been said already. I guess the point I'd like to add to that is that right now, 32 cents of every dollar of tax revenue in Arden Arcade is being exported to some other part of Sacramento County to make some other neighborhood better. I object. If we keep that money in our community, we can put it to good use. And just so you understand the magnitude of these figures, that's $350,000 each and every year for the next 10 years per square mile in Arden Arcade to improve our neighborhoods, to improve our business environment. That's a lot of money. The first thing I would do, our business environment will not improve until we get our public safety issue addressed. We need more cops on the street. Right now in Citrus Heights, there's one officer on the street, a sworn officer on the street per 1,000 residents. We're looking at more like 8 people at the worst time of the day in all of Arden Arcade at best. So I would use the money, I would take that extra revenue that we have or the money that we're going to not be spending somewhere else and put it to public safety and economic development.
Thank you. Let's take another question, and the first to respond this time will be Mr. Boatwright. Mr. Lewis.
The consultants who prepared the fiscal analysis of a proposed city of Arden Arcade stopped short of labeling the new city as, quote, likely to be fiscally feasible, and instead gave a lesser designation of may be fiscally feasible. The consultants projected diminishing budget surpluses over the next decade with a slim 4% general fund surplus by 2021. That's assuming service levels stay the same as they were in 2008 and 2009. Given those margins, how do you propose to increase service levels without raising taxes?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. You know, when LAFCO put together their study, they approached it from a very, very conservative standpoint, somewhere between what Citrus Heights used and what Rancho Cordova used. We believe that the numbers are actually better than what the report's saying. It is approaching it from a very conservative standpoint. Yes, I've read where it's down to 4% at year 10, but we do have the opportunity to do improvements and increase development and get higher and better land use out of our community to be able to provide for those services. In the 10 years, we will be viable, and we are, like I said, we are probably stronger financially than Citrus Heights was when their study was completed.
Ms. Rice?
I would piggyback answers to question number one. As we improve law enforcement and code enforcement and make the area more attractive for businesses to stay and for businesses to come and build up that tax base and build up the revenue with the bringing in businesses once we've improved the environment, bringing in new money.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. That's a great question. If you look at the LAFCO report, the way they looked at it, there's a significant surplus after every year. They have a certain category that they label things that has a 20% swing plus or minus in that category. But the reality is, if you look at it, the fiscal experts said that we have a surplus every single year. Even at year 10, we have significant surplus, and that's at the worst economic time, the numbers that they used at the worst economic time of 2008, 2009, when they did the study in 2010. So when you look at the numbers and you see it, you see that there is significant revenues there. You'll have a city council that will be able to handle those revenues. Right now, the county of Sacramento is broke. They just covered over $122 million deficit with one-time monies of over $30 million. So the city will be in much better financial shape, regardless of what happens in the economy in the next few years, than the county will be able to will be able to provide better services than the county will be able to provide. Thank you.
Mr. Kloss?
I would like to emphasize what Anthony just said about the numbers in the LAFCO report. Those are based on the 2008-2009 year. The entire nation was already in a recession at that point, and so those numbers are likely to be in the future even better than what they're predicting. However, one thing that the LAFCO report does not take into account is the money that you can save. So a dollar saved is a dollar earned, that whole thing. The city of Rancho Cordova wound up putting an extra $2 million into their fund by going to contract for garbage services. So they saved a lot of money by wisely providing the city services, and now they get to spend that money on other things that we would like to spend on, like police protection.
Mr. Burton?
Yes, I too have read the report from LAFCO, and I believe that they are presenting a picture that is conservative as far as our economic development is concerned. And on the realm of economic development, I would use the office of mayor or city council person to go out and recruit more businesses into our community to strengthen our tax bases. As a president of an economic development association, I've gone out and done that in the past. I've helped create jobs. I've been credited with creating over 10,000 new jobs in an area using my economic development status position. And that's the type of leadership that I would bring to the city council and to the mayor's job. I'll be out there as a bully pulpit representing you and this community.
Mr. Archer?
Sure, thank you very much. What gives me confidence in the financial report is looking back at Citrus Heights in 1997, looking at their shopping centers, their roads, their gang activities, their crime, specifically Birdcage and Sunrise Shopping Center, and look what they've done over the last 10 to 15 years to focusing on an efficient and effective government. If we can model ourselves like Citrus Heights, and the report does show us having a $57 million surplus after 10 years, but if we can model ourselves after Citrus Heights and focus on an efficient and effective government, bringing government closer to the people, staying out of debt, paying as you go like Citrus Heights has, we can encourage our business community, we can revitalize some of our corridors, we can make Country Club Plaza a new shopping center, a revitalized shopping center, and we can actually boost the numbers that we currently see in the report, even though they already show us as being successful. Thank you.
Let's have another question from our panelists, and the first to respond will be Ms. Cole.
Ms. Cole, for those of us who don't live in the proposed city of Arden Arcade, what do you think the impact of incorporation is going to be on the remaining areas of the unincorporated county and the neighborhoods that sort of get left behind in the incorporation game? Why should this community take tax money that right now benefits the entire county, and sometimes tax money that comes from people who don't live in the community, come into the area and shop in the area, and keep that tax money just for the city of Arden Arcade?
Thank you. I understand that the model of county that we have now is an old version, and across the state, other counties are helping areas incorporate. It doesn't work anymore because we're too spread out, too urban. It was fine when we were a little kind of cowtown sort of area, and we didn't have urban communities as large as we have. The ways that this will help other communities, and one major one that I see is that as a new city, we would have a voice at for example, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. More cities would have a voice and would have more power about what happens in their cities and their communities. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes, I'd like to echo a little bit of what Pat has said. Down in Riverside, they're currently doing 3 incorporations down there, and they are encouraging, the county is working with them as a partnership they realize they don't want to be in a municipal services. When Citrus Heights and Elk Grove and Ranch Cordova all incorporated, the county lost the contract for garbage in the area. They did not lay off one person that collects that garbage. And so I kind of blame the county for the problems that they're in for not following fiscal responsibility. I believe in regionalism. We have to partnership up, even with West Sacramento and with other cities in Citrus Heights, and we have to do that locally and help each other out. I don't believe in being isolated as an island. I believe we need to work with it and make a partnership with the county and help them in the fiscal problem. But the way it's going now, it cannot continue.
Mr. Harding?
We'll be a better community, and our community around us will be better by having a healthy Arden Arcade. A healthy Arden Arcade is a healthy neighbor that will help the other neighbors. We will work with our neighbors and work on, when we have better police protection, our neighbors will have better police protection. By becoming a city, we'll get an influx of sales tax from the state that the county doesn't get right now and our city doesn't get. We'll have driver's license fees that'll be coming in, and there are other state and national revenues that we're not getting now and the county's not getting them. We are going to be a healthier, more vibrant community, and we will help our neighbors because we can't survive unless we do. And as far as the power goes, the SACOG, for example, has there's a 52% favor with the combination of the city and the county together controlling our bus transportation. And by having another city, that power is going to change, where the cities and the people in those cities are going to have more control and more to say about what our bus schedules are like and the housing and a lot of other things in our community that we don't have now.
Mr. Pagos?
Currently, our tax dollars are going to K Street Mall and the rail yard development. We need to make sure that our current tax dollars stay here in our community. It's very important. Based on the incorporation of this city, there's going to be a change in some of these boards. SACOG is one of them, also regional transit, and those changes will help balance the urban versus suburban needs in our county. So therefore, if we are incorporated, we're going to have more services in our area versus just going to downtown and to those businesses down there. We need to make sure that we focus on our area and really do all the best we can to them. all ships rise with rising water. And so I think, based on other comments, I agree with that if our city's doing well, the regional area is going to do well as well. So thank you very much for the question. I really appreciate it.
Ms. Salter.
So I want to agree with what my other fellow candidates have said. Right now, things are not working. By incorporating as a city, this will give us an opportunity to do better, and we can do better. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to when we are a new city is being eligible for all of those new grants that are open to cities. This will also give our neighbors an opportunity to see how a new city can blossom even in this tough economic climate. Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
Personally, I don't think there will be a major loss to the rest of the county. Via the revenue neutrality obligations that we have, the county is held harmless financially. Moreover, as an aging inner ring suburb, we are at peril if we don't change the dynamics in this community. We have right now one of the highest crime rates for all of the unincorporated county. You would think that the county of Sacramento would have redirected some of those funds to this area, but they didn't. Within the LAFCO report, they can't account for where those dollars go. We can do a better job, and we can concurrently help the rest of the county. We can get the county to rethink their model for providing local municipal services.
Let's move on to another question, and the first candidate to respond will be Mr. Goff.
If cityhood passes and you're elected, you will have the opportunity to draw on the experience of other new cities in the area, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, and Citrus Heights, to name a few. What lessons have you learned from those cities, and describe how you will put those lessons into practice?
Well, that's a good question. I think what we've learned, or some of the things that I've learned in looking at the issue since I've decided to run for city council, Citrus Heights has done a really good job about how they've gone about building their city, pay as you go. They're not incurring a lot of debt. I mean, obviously they have a surplus. Rancho Cordova seems to be in the same boat. And they are providing the additional services, additional law enforcement, the additional infrastructure improvements. And I think their citizens definitely are benefiting from it. And I think we can not so much copy the model, but certainly incorporate the best of what they've done and put that to use in Arden Arcade and have the success, similar success or better success than they've had.
Mr. Arba?
The first thing that we can learn from our neighboring cities is their fiscal conservatism when it comes to providing services. I know Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova set aside a reserve, which now during an economic downturn, they've been able to use part of that reserve to keep service levels at areas that are responsive to their community. They've also, one of the biggest lessons is by becoming a city and having council members that are closer to the residents. They're able to provide those residents a voice in their community, a voice to make their own decisions, and a voice to really control their destiny. And those would be the lessons that I would bring to the City Council of Arden Arcade.
Mr. Wright?
One of the things that we decided as a body here was that we were going to focus on Measure D and not attack each other, which I thought was one of the good things that came out of one of our very first meetings. Another thing that is that as we address crime, we will bring businesses in, and that will help everybody. I think we have to look at contracting out. We have to look at, like the city of Citrus Heights tore down a whole, Sayonara was a drug haven. It's been a problem forever. They bought those properties and just tore them down. They address crime. They're taking care of their problems. They're focusing on fiscal viability. As they bring in businesses, they're able to keep their budgets where they're not in a deficit. They're not spending money they don't have. They're paying as they go. I think that all those things are very important.
Ms. Osei?
I think that what I've learned from watching these cities is, first of all, that we're really much less like Elk Grove than we are Citrus Heights. Elk Grove has had a lot of room for development, so I prefer to look at Citrus Heights. Citrus Heights has shown me two very, very important things. One is that how critical it is to have a responsive government. I don't believe that it's possible to have a truly responsive government that understands your needs and shares your concerns when you're being represented we have 5 supervisors and however many people in Sacramento County. It works out to about 300,000 people per supervisor. In Arden Arcade, we'll have only 20,000 people per city council member. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Citrus Heights started lean and mean. They didn't say, oh, what if, what if. They put their money where it needed to go. They put it into cleaning up their community. And I mean by cleaning up, not just picking up the trash, but they got rid of the graffiti and the crime and did some better code enforcement, and then that turned into economic development for them.
Mr. Boatwright?
Yes, Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova, both, I agree with Will. They came together as candidates. They were together on cityhood. Elk Grove, maybe not so much so. They've been a bit more fractious. Citrus Heights, one of the things that they've done is they've repaved every road in their community. They've planned a pay-as-you-go. They have been a great model. Rancho Cordova, they've had a few growing pains, but they've been able to stay within their budget. They've also been able to increase their police presence. They've given more access to the community members.
Thank you. Ms. Rice?
Yes, I too agree that modeling after Citrus Heights would be more appropriate than Elk Grove, and along with Sayonara and cleaning that mess up, all of Greenback Lane, they also tore down housing that was drying. It was just blight there at Park Oaks and Greenback. But most importantly, what I really appreciate is how they partner with the park districts and reinvented Rush Park, and also the city working with the park districts in building a senior center where the park district does staff and those employees run that senior center, but Citrus Heights partnered with them, and because they are healthy and have the revenue to do it, and the city is so much better for it, as are the families.
Thank you. Let's go on to our next question, and the first to respond will be Mr. Hernandez.
Great. I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about how the campaign is going. And you're out there talking to people. What's your sense of the likelihood of incorporation passing? And if incorporation fails, what's Plan B for this community? Is it annexation by the city of Sacramento? Is there some third way? Do you try it again in a couple of years?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. Going out and talking to people, getting out of my neighborhood in Arden Park and visiting different communities, different gems, Evergreen Commons, the arcade area that I hadn't been in, or at least I didn't think I had been in until I recognized that Evergreen Commons was right down the street from my friend's house, but didn't even know it existed. Going out and talking to a lot of these people about it, and their first reaction is interesting. It's obviously easy to think that more taxes or increased layer of government, which just simply are not true. The county services go away and the city will take over its municipal services. There is no increased taxes for that. Prop 218, Prop 13 apply the same in the city as they would in the county. Once you explain that to people and start explaining the issues where we need law enforcement, code enforcement to clean up our neighborhoods, when we start talking about how they'll have 7 of 7 representatives that they get to vote for versus 1 of 5, and the other 4 aren't supposed to care about our neighborhood because they're not represented here, I think it's been a great opportunity to get to know them. So,
Mr. Klaas?
I think the campaign is going very well. As I've spoken with people, I've been actually surprised at the amount of misinformation that's out there. The very first thing that I tend to hear from people is they're concerned about their taxes going up. And when you put together the fact that Prop 13 exists, and as Anthony already said, Prop 218, the taxes are not going to go up. Plus, when you look at the LAFCO report, you can see that we are net revenue positive. What's Plan B? In my opinion, Plan B is that if we do not become the city of Arden Arcade, we will be annexed by the city of Sacramento. I know that they say that they're not interested, but it really would not take but a vote of the city council to get that in gear. And I personally believe that that staying part of the county of Sacramento just is not an option. I think the lowest risk option here is to become the city of Arden Arcade.
Mr. Burton?
Yes, I too believe that the first thing that we have to be concerned about is annexation by the city of Sacramento. I'm sure that you're all aware of one of the city councilmen in the city that was recently re-elected in the city of Sacramento, had in his campaign statements that he was looking towards this area for annexation. And we all know what the general plan has to say. If you turn to the general plan or Google 2030, you'll see where they have incorporated our area into their study of annexation areas. As far as what I see out there when I'm campaigning with individuals is the fact that everybody recognizes me as being one of the leaders in the community that has always fought for Proposition 13, and also as the former executive director of the Sacramento County Taxpayers League. And so when I speak up and I tell them that we don't have to worry about increases in taxes in this area, I get a favorable response.
Mr. Archer?
Yes, the campaign, how's it going? I'll tell you, it's amazing. Seeing the light bulb turn on in people's minds, saying, Joel, isn't this about extra taxes? Isn't this an extra layer of government? And saying, no, it's the exact opposite. We're taking from the county the municipal services. We're bringing it closer to the people. We're allowing the county to get back to what they're supposed to be doing, the health, welfare, social services, and jails. We're not taking on the county's debt, and we're not taking on the county's pension obligations. We're starting with a clean slate. The light bulb pops on. That is great to see. What is Plan B for us as a community? To continue to watch prostitution enter into our community, continue to watch thrift stores enter into our community, continue to see our business community deteriorate. Plan B, yeah, annexation is a possibility. If we stay the same, I guarantee that taxes are going to go up because the county cannot do what it's currently doing and survive.
Ms. Cole?
Thank you. I've been out talking to people, knocking on a lot of doors, and it's been pretty interesting too. It really seems to be more of an education. Once we tell them the actual facts, as opposed to the myths that they've heard, it makes sense. And we can point them to specific places in the LAFCO study and other areas where they can get the facts from an unbiased source. And I think that's really important. So educating people as part of the campaign is successful and will help us win that campaign. I've also talked to businesses and property owners, and I have a lot of stories about what they'd like to see happen, things that you don't normally think about. And the last thing that I'd like to say is that annexation is, to me, a distinct possibility. I was at the city council meeting when Steve Cohn asked them to change their rules to let us vote on annexation or not before they decided to do it, and the council voted him down. So they can do it, and we don't get a choice.
Mr. Stevens?
It's interesting, as said, when you knock on doors and ask them what they've heard and so forth. A lot of people are educated and some aren't. A lot of myths out there. I've made kind of a project of knocking on doors where the opposition signs are outside and asking them why they're against this. And usually the myth is their taxes are going to go up, their fixed income, they don't want to see that happen. And I then explain, and I've changed a lot of minds, I hope I have anyway. Plan B, I see as annexation to the city. I absolutely think that's going to happen. In all due respect, I don't think that would be so bad, except I've never seen, I moved here in 1973 and they were messing around with K Street then, and they're still messing around with K Street. So I'm more in tune to let's be self-determining and get the economic engine going here in Arden Arcade.
Let's take another question for our panelists. And the first person to respond will be Mr. Harding.
Everyone, I believe, on this panel, or just about everyone, has not only said public safety is your top issue, but you actually want to increase public safety. According to the fiscal analysis, it would cost about $15 million to keep public safety at the level it is at currently. And I talked to Sheriff John McGinnis today, and he said 15 to 16 million is what it would cost to keep sheriff services, public safety services rather, at the current level. The fiscal analysis also says there would be essentially an 8.6% increase in those costs over the first 9 years to keep it at that same level. To put that in some context, you've all said you want to be like Citrus Heights. Citrus Heights had a 25% increase, barring inflation, in the cost for public safety. So to get to the question, how do you propose to fulfill your promises to increase public safety given the costs?
For one thing, I disagree with some of your facts, but the fact that we'll be getting the sales tax from the state of California and the vehicle license fees and national and state revenues from other sources, the increase that we'll be getting from that, and also from the loss of revenue, the 40% that's leaving our area now of our tax money, that's just leaving money that we pay for or that we've earned in our community is going to other parts of the community. All of that will help pay for that. And according to the analysis that I see here, that will pay for it quite well. We're getting enough police and more back to the level that it was before, and even higher, so we can have better protection. That's how we can do that.
Mr. Pagos?
Thank you. The county has been doing a miserable job protecting us. Let's just be frank. So what do? We need to create our own police force. And how we do that is based around community policing techniques. And this technique is where you have community policing mixes of full-time officers with volunteer officers and maintenance of neighborhoods. And so you combine all those, and that hopefully will reduce some of the costs, which other cities have implemented as well and have had significant decreases in their crime rates. The first part of community policing has a mix of full-time police officers and volunteer police officers. These volunteer police officers go through a very extensive training before they are able to get on the street, but then they can do a number of functions that our badges don't necessarily have to do, like checking on your house when you're on vacation, providing extra patrol around parks and retail centers, and providing shuttles to and from garages, and marking abandoned vehicles. So there's a lot of opportunities there to kind of think outside the box.
Ms. Salter?
So I agree that we actually do need to exceed our current level of safety. We will fund this by getting the vehicle license fees that Warren was talking about. We will fund this by increasing our tax base. We will fund this by getting some of the new city grants that we will be eligible, the state and federal money. We will also get this by promoting code enforcement. We will be finding people who are violating codes that will bring in money that will help us fund our police department. So that's how we're going to fund this. Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
As a former police command officer, I know how to spread those dollars around and get a real high impact. First thing we're going to do is I would disagree. I have no interest in forming my own costly police department. I think using the Southern California Lakewood model that's been reported on our local papers is the way to go. I want boots on the ground first. First we start with the deputies, then we start with the sergeant. If I just get a piece of a command officer's salary, that's fine with me. The next thing is we're going to focus on high-risk populations, on criminal hotspots, and there's any number of things that can be done to improve our community and make it a better, safer place to live. Things that aren't being done right now.
Mr. Goff?
Thank you. I concur with a lot of what my colleagues up here on the dais have said. I think the long-term viability for anything in this city is going to be establishing the businesses and the business tax base, and not raising taxes, but like I said, establishing businesses within our commercial corridors and using that revenue to fund the programs that we're all looking at, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be parks. We're going to have to do some serious business developments and some sustainability within the business community so that we can have the funding to do anything in this, including the law enforcement and increasing the service levels. And in the absence of that, you know, it's all about making choices. That's what governing is about. It's making the choices that are going to be tough, that are going to impact all of us, but hopefully we'll do the job that we can impact the most people to the good. So, thank you.
Mr. Arba?
I think the most important question with that issue is by becoming a city, we're able to keep our resources in our community and decide on what our priorities are for our community. So if police is a high priority, which you've heard tonight from many of the members here, then we'd be able to direct those resources toward our law enforcement. And I do agree with Mr. Powers that the best decision for us is to stick with the sheriff's deputies. They have the institutional knowledge of our community, and we'd be able to add to their force to really put out the issues and the problems in our community and make our community safer.
Let's move on to another question from our panelists, and let's let Mr. Wright be the first to respond.
Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright, what's your assessment of the land use policies that have been in place in the community of Arden Arcade? And in particular, I want to ask you about affordable housing and the patterns of affordable housing development that have gone on in the community and what the city should do differently than the county has done.
Well, one of the things that I noticed is that Arden Arcade has a great majority of apartments. There are so many apartments in the Arden Arcade area. It seems as if the county has approved, you know, development after development after development in the area, and you know, I think that, you know, we don't have areas to grow. We don't have, you know, land where we can develop and build housing. So I think that, you know, there's not much we can do. I mean, we can do some infill, we can do some development on small lots, we can encourage builders to go into some spots, but, you know, we're really hamstrung on the fact that we don't have, you know, viable land for builders. I think the one thing is that if there are apartments that want to convert to condos, I think that that might be something that we could look at.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Osi?
Well, I think this is right on point. As our own city, we will make the decisions ourselves for what the land use policies are. If we want more affordable housing, we'll have more affordable housing. If we don't want it, we won't. Right now, Sacramento County has to place its affordable housing somewhere. It's been placing it in places like Arden Arcade. We are carrying far more than our fair share, if you will, of affordable housing. Now, I don't have anything against affordable housing. I think diverse communities are rich communities. As to other kinds of land use policies, this is right up my alley. This is pretty much what I do. And I'll tell you, I went out last week and I talked to businesses in the area, in the Arden Arcade area, for the entire day. And what I heard was that they are so restricted that they can't succeed. They're not allowed to have signs. The county comes around and says, you have to take the sign down. How are they going to be successful if they can't advertise what it is that they're wanting to sell? They are concerned about the vacant lots that exist here. As our own government, as our own city, we can deal with these things and improve our community so much.
Mr. Osi? Excuse me, Mr. Boatwright?
You know, the county has given us a lot of low-income housing in this neighborhood. That's their idea of land use and codes and zoning. We have a lot of apartments. As Ms. Osi said, as a city council, we will be able to decide those areas that we may want or we may not want undesirable, or, and I guess I shouldn't say undesirable, but we can't have more than our fair share of affordable housing and apartments. We need some urban renewal in many areas. We need to be in a position where we can allow for some zoning changes, for some zoning flexibility, for some zoning upgrades to higher and better uses. We need to allow for less restrictive use on some of our business, but we have to make sure that we do keep desirable businesses in our community.
Ms. Rice?
I would agree. The handful have answered the same question, and I just want to hone in on the number of apartments that are in our community. Particular, I'm picturing Marconi, and there's lots of apartments there, low income and not. And I would like to speak to the screening process for the individuals that are allowed to rent. I'd like to shore them up, make them more stringent, actually have ways to not necessarily be housing a criminal element or folks who don't need to be living in those apartments. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Well, having sat on our planning commission, I've seen how the county has rezoned several areas in our community, stuff that doesn't fit within those neighborhoods. Unbelievable densities in neighborhoods that should never have the densities that those areas are being rezoned at. And those created significant conflicts. When we had neighbors come before the planning commission to talk about, this housing, 5 or 6 houses per acre when it's a 2 or 3 acre subdivision just simply doesn't make sense. You see this along a lot of our corridors where you see a patchwork of multifamily housing that seems out of place when it backs up to really nice neighborhoods that, it was just placed there versus necessarily some well thought out plans. With cityhood, we will have local representation. All 7 folks on the city council there will also have a planning commission that is from our specific area that will be able to say, hey, wait a minute, let's rethink about this. How do these areas actually fit in within the community? It simply doesn't make any sense.
Mr. Claus?
I think Mary hit the nail on the head. This is one of the major reasons why I decided to run for the city council, is because if you're looking at a zoning decision or what to put onto a parcel, do you want that decision being made by the people downtown, or do you want that decision being made by your neighbors? All of the people you have on the table here, we're your neighbors. I live in Woodside Condominium Complex. It was an apartment complex converted 30 years ago or thereabouts. On one side of me is Sierra Boulevard, and there are other converted apartments there, and it's a very nice neighborhood. You go out the other side of our complex, you're on Northrop Avenue. You have low-income apartments, and what I can tell you is when you see a first month rent-free or $99 for your first month sign go up, you know that that's going to be a problem for policing. So, I see it in my neighborhood. And I think that I want my local neighbors to be making zoning decisions.
Let's take another question from our panelists, and the first candidate to respond will be Mr. Burton.
If cityhood passes and you're elected, you will have a very important role in this city. I mean, you'll be helping set the foundation, setting the policies and setting everything in place from which the future will essentially spring. So to ask it in sort of the most blunt way, what the heck do you know about local government?
What do I know about local government? Well, I've been involved in local government ever since I graduated from high school. First bit of local government that I served on was the Capital Improvement Committee for my little town of Manhattan Beach, where I graduated from high school. At the age of 19, I was appointed to that. During the course of my years, I've been president of the Economic Development Association, president of Private Industry Council. I've been a member of numerous chambers up and down the state of California. When we talk about Citrus Heights, I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce in Citrus Heights before they ever became a city. And I worked very closely with the present members of the city council over there. I've also worked with the ones over in Rancho Cordova. I'm very, very involved. I work as, like I said, I'm past president, I'm past executive director of the County Taxpayers League and serve as a board member there.
Mr. Archer?
I'm always involved.
Mr. Archer?
What the heck do we know about local government? I think that question is exciting, to tell you the truth. Having the opportunity for us to sit up here to see the future of our community, to be able to direct it and lead it. For myself, being involved in the incorporation committee the last 4 years, I've got to sit down with Steve Slowey and Jeannie Bruins and Henry Tingle from Citrus Heights, pick their brains on law enforcement and on the land use and the zoning, what they've had to battle at Citrus Heights as far as cleaning up their streets, being able to talk to the things going on in Elk Grove, Gary Davis on the city council, Pat Hume, the problems that they faced in Elk Grove with their budgets and growing too large, and then the reasons why Rancho Cordova even became a city, the dumping ground of apartment complexes and the abandoned cars. Sitting down with David Sander, city councilman, and Linda Budge, I've had firsthand opportunity to be able to talk to them about their successes and their failures, the things they've liked and the things they would have done differently. And tell you the truth, every one of them, without a shadow of a doubt, would have done it again and again and again. They love cityhood.
Thank you. Ms. Cole?
Thank you. In my career at SMUD, I worked a lot with local government agencies in energy conservation programs, and it was SMUD is a government agency itself, so I worked with communities and other cities and other jurisdictions. In the last 6 months before I actually applied for this job, I was working for the county tax collector, treasurer tax collector in Placer County, implementing an energy program. Got a really good different perspective of how a county operates and the fiscal differences between counties, and felt that was very valuable. I've met, as Joel has, also met with folks from the other cities and learned a lot about the ups and downs and pros and cons and hoops that they've had to go through, and I feel that they'll be alongside us and they will have already volunteered to help us any way they can, and I look forward to that.
Mr. Stevens?
During my tenure with the Sheriff's Department, 31 years, I made many presentations. I don't know if you want to call County of Sacramento local government or not, but it could be. But I've made many presentations on projects and mostly related to law enforcement and to the County Board of Supervisors. I'm the Regional Operational Coordinator for Homeland Security for the interoperable radio communications between public safety agencies, and in the last since 2004, I've been instrumental in writing grants that have brought $18 million to the Sacramento region to public safety agencies. But I think the most important thing on local government that a city councilman or mayor could vote to do is not get a good city manager, but get a great city manager. That's what you need to focus on when we become members of that council.
Mr. Harding?
I live and breathe local government. I have had a career as a Sacramento County employee for 32 years in data processing, and during that time I was president of the Data Processing Professionals Association, and I was president of the Sacramento County Management Association. I've been a parks director. I've been elected to 9 four-year terms, and I've worked there as a parks director for 32 years. I've had over 6,000 hours sitting in meetings and directing the parks in my community. I served on the Blue Ribbon Commission, the Sacramento County Blue Ribbon Commission for Civil Service Reform, and we made some major reforms. I've sat on the San Juan Unified School District Budget Committee when we had Proposition 13 hit them and they had to make a lot of adjustments, and I founded our local neighborhood association. I live and breathe local government.
Mr. Pagos?
Thank you for the question. And I'm having a little trouble with my microphone, so I'm going to have to utilize this as well. So I've wanted to completely understand the process for local government. My whole goal in life was to make the world a better place. And how I did that was to work in the Assembly and the Senate and for Governor Schwarzenegger to make sure I have a comprehensive understanding of what those policies do to local government. I'm always fighting for the local government person. I understand the regulatory and legislative process, and I'll bring that knowledge to this proposed city of Arden Arcade. Very, very important that you understand how these mechanisms get in place so that we can unbundle those and really take advantage of the programs that are out there for our proposed city. And another comment on the cityhood itself would allow us more opportunity for grants and other opportunities that won't provide us now in an unincorporated area.
We'll move on now to another question from our panel, and we'll begin with Ms. Salter this time.
Okay. Can you tell me what you believe the most important environmental issue is in the community of Arden Arcade and what you do to tackle it?
That's an interesting question. I think the most important environmental issue is cleaning up our neighborhood, ensuring that we have safe water to drink, and getting green jobs in. I think Arden Arcade can become a model city for a green environment, encouraging people to put solar panels on, encouraging people to recycle and compost. And so I think, and I look at Arden Arcade as a place that can save our environment and ensure that we have clean drinking water. Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
Well, there's a number of issues. One, I live near Watt Avenue. It's a freeway. The diesel plume that comes off of that reaches my house. It reaches my kids, my grandchildren. So one of the things is working on transportation issues to try and find some way to work regionally, as has been stated earlier, to control that and work with the state, federal, and local agencies, including the county, to find ways to reduce the emissions off of Watt and all of the other major arterial roads. In addition, we have watershed issues. We have a number of creeks, Chicken Ranch Slough, Arden Creek, and other places that are the unfortunate recipients of unintended waste and effluents. So there's a number of issues, and we have the ability as a local city to take charge of those, put a spotlight on them, and turn them around to the benefit of our community, not just locally, but the larger community as well.
Mr. Goff?
Thank you. I would say a couple of issues that I would say are more on the minor scale. Noise pollution. Certainly the Watt Avenue issue, the speeds, Fulton Avenue, some of its roadway condition, some of its speeds, Howe Avenue. You got the freeway on what would be the north end of the city. There's noise issues there. That's a quality of life issue for all of us, and that's something that we would need to address. There's some solid waste issues. They're not. I don't think they're significant. I think the garbage collection has been pretty good, and I imagine it would continue to be. The water issue could be one that needs to be addressed, in specifically groundwater contamination issues that might arise. And I think the last issue that would be looking at building improvement, energy improvement, energy efficiency improvements to buildings and homes within Arden Arcade. Thank you.
Mr. Arba?
As I look to the future of our community, and if we make the decision to become a city, I'd like to see a city that's sustainable, not only sustainable fiscally, as we've all said tonight, but sustainable environmentally. And we do that by first cleaning up making our neighborhoods safer, cleaning up the blight, bringing new businesses in, and then also looking at specific areas where we can grow possibly in the new green economy of the future, bringing in green jobs, retrofitting some of our existing buildings to consume less energy, reducing our carbon footprint. That can all contribute to building a sustainable community in the future.
Mr. Wright?
I'm a member of the Tree Foundation. I'm one of the leaf stewards, and we're in the process of planting, a number of trees throughout the Sacramento region. And some of those things are to, to increase the amount of shade, which will reduce temperatures. Also, there's just a variety of benefits from that. I was in the first class that the Tree Foundation put together. Also, I think we could look at a lot of businesses can use less water, and you can see a lot of businesses already are putting trees in, and it reduces the temperature. We can, the water agencies actually are already doing it. They come out and they retrofit. They give, low flow shower heads, sprinkler systems. Some people are taking out their lawns. So I think we can start on a really small level and work our way up. And then as businesses come in, I think it's in their own economic benefit to retrofit or use less energy.
I don't think we're exempt from any of the environmental issues in the region. We do need to address most of them as a region. In the case of Arden Arcade, I suppose for me, the two most critical issues to address are air quality and water. We don't have enough water, we waste too much water, and we make the water dirty. We have to stop. We have to stop this everywhere. We can start by stopping it in Arden Arcade. As for air pollution, we really, really, really do need to work together with the other communities in the greater Sacramento area. For me, in Arden Arcade, that means we need to focus our energy and some of our dollars on transportation. We don't have good public transportation options in Arden Arcade, precisely for the same reason we're in this boat in the first place. The money is being spent somewhere else in some other neighborhood. I'd like to also say something about the earlier question about local government. I too know a lot about local government because I've worked side by side with them for about 25 years. The point being, we don't have one. We need one. All government should be local. We need a local government in Arden Arcade.
We'll move on now to another question, and we'll begin with Mr. Boatwright.
Arden Arcade seems to have a very interesting demographic. You have some of probably the wealthiest people in the area, many of whom, as an aside, I believe have come out against incorporation. You also have many of the poorest people in the area living in affordable housing, which some on the panel have said the area has a disproportionate share of. I'd ask you, who do you consider to be your constituency, and how do you meet everyone's needs?
For me, my constituency is probably right in between the two. I'm not really connected to the wealthy that live in the south part of the city of Arden Arcade. I live more towards the north end of Arden Arcade. I'm not too far away from where we have some of our poorer neighborhoods. So my connection is probably somewhere right in the middle.
Ms. Rice?
I would say that my constituents for myself would be in the middle as well, probably somewhere between the 30 and 55-year-old range. As I do precinct walking, those are the folks that seem to be most open. If they don't know anything, they definitely do listen, and if they're on the fence, they fall towards Measure D. They can absolutely see the value in improving this area. They're in the midst of raising kids, or they're at the tail end, or they want their children's children to be raised in this area as well. So I would say it would be that age group, that demographic. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Well, I'm an equal opportunity candidate. A vote is good, just as good in the north as it is in the south. I'm talking to everyone to make sure that they understand what cityhood brings to them. And the reality is I've actually seen what you're talking about. There seems to be a geographical bias between the south and the north of the community. I think it all relates around public safety. The south doesn't have the day-to-day crime that the north does have. I mean, it's that simple. But when you have a problem in the south, as some of my neighbors have had, and when they call and it takes 25 minutes for a cop to show up, it shouldn't take 25 minutes for a cop to show up. It's that simple. It shouldn't take it in the south, and it shouldn't take it definitely in the north where it's more of a problem. So I view cityhood as a great opportunity for our community to help provide greater law enforcement, whether you live in the south or the north. The north has the most impacts with all the business community and everything else. We talked earlier about resources, and is it fair that we capture resources versus going elsewhere? If we're taking the crime, if we're taking the traffic and the other impacts, I think we should take the fees and the taxes that are generated from them.
Mr. Claus?
My constituency is the entire community. Now, I live in a neighborhood, I told you, where on one side I have some of the wealthier people, and on the other side I have some of the poorer people. I'm likely to hear from all of my neighbors, but this is the crux of the issue of becoming cityhood. You're making a choice of whether you want to take local control, and you're going to make a choice of whether or not you want to trust 7 of the people up here to start making decisions for you. 7 of us, if we become the city, 7 of us will start making those decisions. And there will always be 2 sides to every story. So I will tell you, I am a very analytical person, and whatever the issue is, I weigh both sides, and I have to be able to make a decision based on what my own opinion is.
Mr. Burton?
I reach out to everybody in the community, young people, senior citizens, those that fall any place in between. As you know, I belong to all kinds of organizations. I belong to young groups. I belong to, I've been appointed by the White House to the White House Commission on Aging. I'm past president of of Sacramento County's senior and seniors organizations. I'm president of public television for this community, which has one of the highest viewing audience of young people in this area. I don't believe that you can say that you are categorize my constituency as one group. It's everybody.
Mr. Archer?
That's probably one of the best questions I've heard all night. My constituency, with all honesty, I believe is both. I grew up with a single mother. I grew up on the opposite side of the tracks. I understand what a lot of people in our community are going through. I'm a financial advisor. I'm a business owner. My firm belief is as a community, our true test is not what we do with our well-off neighborhoods. They have needs. We need to reduce the red tape with government and allow businesses to prosper. But our true test is going to be how we deal with our Annandale and how we deal with our lyric communities. How we provide school resource officers in Dyer Kelly and Mariloma and El Camino. How we provide after-school programs at community centers. That's one of the greatest needs of our community. Citrus Heights has done it. We have the opportunity. That will be the test of our community.
We'll move on to another question now and let Ms. Cole be the first to respond.
Thanks, Ms. Cole. If cityhood does pass, where do you propose the City of Arden Arcade put City Hall? And are you guys all agreed that Arden Arcade is the best name for the city? Are there better ideas up there?
Best name or worst name? Hey, this is mine.
Your opinion.
Thank you for giving me a great question. We'll put City Hall anywhere where we can find a place where we can stick everyone in a building and work together. It doesn't have to be fancy, and there are plenty of places and opportunities there. So we joke about it. I'd like to do it across from the AT&T building because I worked there as a receptionist when I was 18, and it'd be cool to go back as a city council person. The name I've just had a lot of fun with lately. We tend to talk to now about just using Arden. There's an Arden, England, and it's in Warwickshire, and I think it would be great if we kind of tied our Arden name to that, and we had a sister city in England named Arden. So I don't like the name either, and we'll change it, whatever the public wants, all of them.
Mr. Stevens?
There are a number of possibilities where you could put City Hall. The sheriff's station over there on Marconi is under a lease by the county. They have a long-term lease, so they didn't close it when the sheriff moved back out to Garfield. So that would be available. There's room in there. There's a community room in there. We can hold meetings there to start us off. So that seems to be the most viable available area to hold City Hall for now to start. Like I said, to start. As far as the name's concerned, I've had a number of people come to me and ask about the name. Nobody likes the hyphenated name, including the B. Mr. Breton made a comment about it way back when. I'm a rose by any other name would be fine with me as long as we can accomplish what we want. I jokingly said one time that I'd like to call it West Carmichael. That way my property values would go up. But that's kind of where I am on it.
Mr. Harding?
I'd like to jump back to the environmental question just real fast. And say I'd like to include in the concern that we have about the environment is the Sacramento Parkway. We will be part of that. We must preserve its natural effect. We don't want soccer fields on it, even though I'm a soccer coach myself. We must preserve its natural state, and we have to find a way to do that. And we will have a part of that by being a new city. As to the City Hall, we need to start renting a place and using the facilities we have until we can really justify the need for building anything, if ever. As far as the name of the place, that's up to the people. This is their community. It'll be much easier for them to change the name of their city with one representative for every 15,000 people compared to what we have now, which is 480,000 people per representative. People will come in the store and actually talk to me, or if I'm elected, of course, the council members. They can talk to their council members in the store, in the malls, on the streets. They can't do that now when one person represents 480,000 people. One person per 15,000 people is what we're offering to you. And that not just on the name, but on anything else about the community.
Mr. Pagos?
Thank you very much for the question. That's a great conundrum to have, where to place the city hall. I think we're kind of getting in front of ourselves. First, we need to make sure that we get it passed. And so as far as a location, I'm not really concerned with that at the moment, more of making sure we get that passed. As far as the name of the city, I think I have a pretty innovative idea to engage school kiddos and have a school kid competition for the name and try to get them engaged, because if the kids are engaged, the parents are going to be engaged. And so it's really important to get that community involvement throughout all our schools. I think that's one way that we can really bring the community together around this new proposed city of Arden Arcade, is to get that buy-in through our schools and making sure that our kiddos are involved in this process as well. Just real briefly on the environmental question as well. I was born and raised here and in this great community, and I remember very often going through the little Arden Creek, going to Cowan Elementary School, and preserving the tributaries throughout our region is very important as well. Thank you for the question.
Ms. Salter?
That's an interesting question. I was thinking about where we could put City Hall the other day, and one of the places that I thought about is William Glenn is actually going out of business, and they've got a really big building that we could retrofit, and I thought that would be a great place to put it, right in the middle of kind of Arden Arcade. In terms of the name, I was actually talking to a couple people about that the other day, and we, in my informal poll, tend to like the name Arden, but I think the voters need to choose the name of the city.
Mr. Powers?
I'll answer the second. I concur. The voters should choose the name of the city. The county gave us the name Arden Arcade. In fact, I actually went and looked at one of the signs that they put up. In terms of the location, it ought to be a high visibility location. It ought to be easily accessible by mass transit. And it ought to be large enough to accommodate all city services so that you don't have to do like you do with the county, and that's traipse around from Branch Center Road down to downtown to get your business done. So it ought to meet those needs.
Let's pose another question to the candidates, beginning with Mr. Goff.
I'd actually start with a simple, this is two parts. I'm curious, listening to everyone, how many people on this panel, by a show of hands, would consider themselves conservative? How about Republican?
How do you define that?
It's before I get to the full question, I just wanted to know, show of hands, how many people consider themselves conservative? Politically conservative?
No.
Not me.
Okay. This is a little bit different phrasing than for the people that don't, but I'm curious to know for the conservatives, conservative ideology usually says less government, and this goes along with what the opponents of cityhood have to say, which is this creates another level of government. And so I'd pose it to everyone. Why do you want to create another level of government?
Okay, thank you for the question. On the conservative issue, I would say I am running nonpartisan, but I think overall I am more fiscally conservative. I'm a born-again Christian, so I tend to be more conservative on issues than liberal. But I don't ascribe to all the Republican platform. As far as adding another layer of government, I don't think this is adding another layer of government, because we're having local government, which is small government. I think that's a good thing. I think the problem is what adds another layer of government is the county doesn't take away the layer of government we replace. And that's the issue. That's the fundamental problem. And that's why government continues to grow. I mean, if we provide municipal services at the municipal level, that is small government. That's responsive government for all the citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Arba?
Sure. On the question of duplicative government, I would say that we are not duplicating the system that the Sacramento County has. We're redirecting to a more effective and to a more responsive government. And that's why I'm advocating for cityhood, because I want one that's responsive to our residents and can hear our voice.
Mr. Wright?
I think we're just substituting one form of government for another, and we're going small rather than big. And if we didn't incorporate, what we're going to have is a bigger government, because Sacramento County is going to take us over. So we are actually going to end up with a smaller government if we are Arden Arcade, regardless. If we don't, we're going to end up with either Sacramento County or the city of Sacramento, and either one of those are bigger than we are. I think that responsive small government is what we're going to end up with. And I also want to say that I'm one of the noise polluters, because I play my stereo very loud,
And I grew up in Del Paso Heights, so I will represent the people who don't vote and who are not out there and who are not coming before the city council and who don't have a voice. So, thank you.
Ms. Ossie?
This is not an additional layer of government. This is a replacement government. The County of Sacramento has no business being in the business of providing municipal services. They should never have started doing it. We were a rural county when that decision was made, and we're no longer a rural county, particularly in the Arden Arcade area. Those jobs need to be transferred to a new government that can provide the services adequately. And by being a new government and being the government of Arden Arcade, there'll be a 16 square mile area with approximately 95,000 people, each of whom has a big voice in how that government is run. I just want to remind you that we're not the first to do this, and it's not just Citrus Heights or Rancho Cordova. 237 years ago, a whole bunch of people, you may recall, threw a whole bunch of tea into the bay in Boston because they didn't want somebody a long ways away who knew nothing about their circumstances making their decisions for them. That's what we're talking about here. Local government, local people that you see in the grocery store, at church and school, making decisions that will impact them the same as they impact you.
Mr. Boatwright.
I don't think the people in the city of Sacramento, the people in the city of Citrus Heights, Rancho Cordova, or Elk Grove look at their cities as providing an additional layer of government. The county is providing for them social services, courts, and jails. We will be providing as our own city, our own building departments, our own planning departments, our own code enforcement, our own police department. We won't be relying on the county any longer for those services. It is a replacement government with something that's smaller, that's something that's more efficient, and something that's way more accessible to the public.
Ms. Rice?
Yes, I agree. And when stumping for Measure D, and that very question comes up right at the top after taxes, and we don't need another layer of government. Why do we need more politicians, et cetera? And I say not another layer, just better government, period. Everyone has said it. The county provides the social services. We just take care of our municipal. And it is such a good idea. Up and down the state, other counties are helping the unincorporated areas become cities.
Okay, let's take another question from our media panel, and the first to respond will be Mr. Hernandez.
Okay. I want to ask a little more specifically about the transportation systems in Arden Arcade. And I want to ask everybody, do you ride public transportation? Can you get around on public transportation in Arden Arcade? Is that something that needs to be addressed? And what would you do generally, public transportation, road transportation, to improve the transportation systems in the community?
If anybody's ridden our transportation system in our area, it's set up to go to downtown. It seems like most of our transportation system is set up for downtown traffic versus necessarily I'll use the word inner city traffic, but inner Arden Arcade traffic. I think at some point we need to focus on our transit systems and have a survey of our community and figure out where do they need to go? How do they need to get from point A to point B within our community or even elsewhere, and then set up the system to help accommodate that. As far as public transportation, if you consider bikes and other things, yes. Absolutely. It's a great area to go around and bike around and get to places like that. So absolutely use, I guess, that form of public transportation.
Mr. Claus?
When I was in college, I lived on Fulton Avenue, and I used to take regional transit, bus 26, every day to college. And I like regional transit. I like taking the bus when I can. I don't take it now because it doesn't go where I want to go, when I want to go there. I live on this side of the river. I work on the other side of the river. Try and get that into your schedule. It doesn't work for me right now. However, it is one of the things that I look at and see where we have the opportunity to be another voice on the Regional Transit Board. This is the primary reason why other cities want to or have donated money to the incorporation effort, is because it will give them a sister city to help with such issues. You see traffic going both ways on Highway 50. How come all the buses go downtown and they aren't going out to Hazel and Sunrise? This is a real issue for our community.
Mr. Burton?
Yes, I concur that it is a real issue for our community. I served for over 5 years on the Transportation and Clean Air Collaborative. I was appointed by the Board of Supervisors to that commission. And transportation in our area is very critical. It's going to become even more critical in future years because of the aging population that we have here. We have to make sure that I, as a senior, and other seniors in this area have adequate transportation to get to their doctors, to get to the hospital, to get to the churches they go to, or get to the libraries. And I will work strongly and be a voice for better transportation in our area. And if we have better transportation, then we'll have cleaner air, because then we won't have so much pollution on our streets.
Mr. Archer?
Great question, and I think I love the answers that I've heard before me. One of the main reasons to incorporate is to make sure we have local representation on these local boards, and regional transit is one of them, one of the main ones. And I believe the number is something close to $5 to $6 million went out to Rancho Cordova simply because they fought for it on the Regional Transit Board. They wanted to redevelop and revitalize their regional transit system out in Rancho Cordova, and they fought for the funds out there. At this point in time, we have no voice on RT for Arden Arcade. We have no voice on SACOG for Arden Arcade, and as a city, we would be able to put a voice on those boards. We need to have that representation and that focus on our community, making sure that if there are federal funds available, or if there are extra funds available, we have a voice from our community fighting to say, hey, Arden Arcade deserves some of those funds also, and especially for the transit system. Thank you.
Ms. Cole?
Thank you. I have tried public transportation. I graduated from Sac State in 2002, and I rode the bus from our house to Sac State most of the time. Just for a lark, sort of, we got stuck for a ride from the airport, and we figured out how to take the bus all the way home, but we got lost sort of on that system in Del Paso Heights, and nice folks there to put us on the right bus. I ride a bike in the area. I'm a member of Sacramento Area Bicycle Association. So I think we need to improve our transportation, as others have said. We're not getting the service we have here that we need. And we also have, given the demographics, an aging population and a great deal of Arden Arcade. And, you know, when they pry those car keys out of my hands, I'm going to want some good transportation. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
There's not much I could say that hasn't already been said, but the bottom line is that I believe a disproportionate amount of public transit has been dedicated to downtown Sacramento going to and from. The truth is that most people who live in Arden Arcade would work in the city of Sacramento. It's a great bedroom community, and even though we have an aging demographic, I'd like to see this area build up where younger families come in as things change. When I meet my great demise somewhere, some young family take over my house. But the bottom line is there's a disproportionate amount. We need to have local control to bring that. Now, regional transit is what it is, regional. It has to be designed regionally. Most people commute to Rancho Cordova, has a large commute in for work there, and as the city of Sacramento does. We need to redesign these routes and look at the way we do business with them.
Let's go to another question and begin with Mr. Harding.
As specifically as possible, talk a little bit about your plans for economic development.
I'd like to jump just for a minute back to the question about an extra level of government. We have an extra level of government. It's called Sacramento County doing municipal services when they're not supposed to. It's like a cancer in our community. It's blocking our community from getting sales tax, vehicle license fees, and other fees. The state of California Constitution says that they shall take care of jails and mental and health problems, not municipal services. Now, back to the economic plan you said. Well, we have to have some experts. We have to get our community together. We have to put together businessmen in our community to work on what we're going to do for our development. We are not experts on all of this. We have to put it together with professionals and just work towards bringing more jobs, green jobs hopefully, and developing our community, taking care of our infrastructure. How do we handle the money that's coming in that wasn't coming in before? all of that has to work together.
Mr. Pagos?
Yes, I think through public safety and improving our home values through code enforcement are going to be key to making sure that businesses want to come to our community in the first place. And so what do we do when these businesses come knocking on our door? We try to provide them as much help as possible is setting up their business here in the community. Not saying, eliminating regulations, but bearing in mind that these are businesses that need to be able to act quickly to make decisions. So streamlining regulations, also trying to revitalize Fulton Auto Mall here and trying to bring in more businesses to Fulton Auto Mall. And then my little baby over there, Country Club Center, I was born and raised in that little place, and I just love that thing. There's a good opportunity there. I think we invite different investors to come into the community, talk about options for that site, hopefully revitalizing that mall and really making that an economic engine for our area as well. I hope everyone heard that because I have been having some mic issues as well. Thank you.
Ms. Salter?
Okay. This is my idea. I'd like Arden Arcade to be a place where we can get all of our local business needs met. And the way I propose to do this is I'd first survey all the businesses and say, what do you think we need in this community? Then I would survey all the residents and say, what would you like to see in Arden Arcade? Then I would make a list and compile it and put all of the local businesses or the types of businesses that people want to see at the top. And then I would go out there and I would try and get those businesses to move into Arden Arcade. That's my economic development plan.
Mr. Powers?
As was said earlier, I concur that public safety is a bottom line need for economic development. So we work on that. But that's not going to really spur things to grow like they should. One, we need a strategy, some sort of strategic plan, which would garner the information that all of our business leaders presently have in one place, get them together, and see what we can do to energize them. We have a lot of untapped opportunities with Country Club. It's not what it was 10, 15 years ago. It can be energized. We've just lost a major, we lost William Glenn in Town and Country. Town and Country needs a lot of attention. And so let's first pay attention to all of our existing places, see who we can bring in to make a difference, and finally build economic development around providing jobs and a good sound tax base.
Mr. Goff?
Mr. Powers stole most of my thunder on that one. But like I said earlier, I think we need to look at providing local incentives to businesses and also using the professionals, using consultants if need be to some extent, is looking at what are the other cities and what's offered local, regionally in this area so that we can compete to be able to attract businesses. But like I said, I think we can offer local incentives in our existing commercial corridors, and also look to develop new properties that become available. I know we don't have a lot of build-out room, but for example, if say Encina High School closed down and getting that land, how would we redevelop that? That might be something where we could bring in a small plant, something like that, small manufacturing facility to enable the creation of jobs, and also to, improve our tax base.
Mr. Arba?
Specifically, I would look to use a redevelopment agency, your redevelopment plan, to use tax increment savings to make coming in and cleaning up some of our blight easier for the community to come in. I've contacted the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, and we have one area as part of Auburn Boulevard, which is what I would consider a Tier 2 priority for the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. If we become a city, we'd be able to create our own priorities for our community.
Let's move on to another question, and we'll begin with Mr. Wright.
Okay, I'd actually like to extend the question or a similar question to the next group, and maybe just tweak it a little bit by asking specifically what would you do to try to revitalize, bring back up the aging and underperforming commercial corridors in the area?
Well, I said earlier, I would like to see a restaurant entertainment corridor of some sort
And I also think that we need to focus on bringing in other types of businesses because we basically have retail and auto. You know, we need to bring in other types of businesses, and I think once we address the law enforcement aspect, those things will come in. So I think that we need to focus on cutting regulation, bringing them in, making it easy for them, you know, one stop, they walk in, they can get their permits, everything can be handled, you know, in a day or two. They don't have to go through, you know, like somebody was saying earlier, start with Power In and go downtown and then go back to Power In. They can just walk in with all their plans, and hopefully we'll have people that can just kind of walk them through the process. I think we can make it easy, we can make it fast, and we can bring people in here once we get the law enforcement aspect fixed. And I would like to propose the name of Bohemia, which is an area inside Arden Arcade. So thanks.
Ms. Osei?
First, on the question of economic development in general, number one, public safety. Number two, let's make this an attractive area. Number three, if we need to provide some economic incentives for good businesses to come here. Personally, I want to see jobs that are production jobs move into Arden Arcade. We are just providing service job after service job after service job. We need to stop sending all of these jobs to China, for example. We need those jobs right here. For example, we grow corn in the United States, and we send that corn to China, and we send that corn to Norway, and they make bags, plastic bags, and they're not plastic, they're corn-based, but they send them back to us, and we pay them for them, a lot of money. That's ridiculous. Why aren't we doing that right here in Arden Arcade? In the question of specific types of incentives, we can give them either grants or loans. We can apply for other money from other sources, which is readily available for this kind of development. If we need to, we can talk to our landlords in the community and see if we can work out something with them to give them additional incentives there.
Mr. Boatwright?
Well, first off, code enforcement, keep our buildings clean, keep graffiti down. I think the first thing we have to do is make sure we retain the businesses that we have here and that we help them to become successful. And it may take some incentives, it may take some tax breaks, it may take some business management assistance from professionals. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to attract companies like, instead of Apple going to Elk Grove, Apple could be in a place like Arden Arcade. There is one other thing that we can do too, and that's certainly to simplify the permit process, the acceptance process, the time frame to go through for getting use permits and other governmental agencies. Those kind of things help us. There are federal dollars out there that we can attract to also bring in additional revenue for revitalization of existing buildings.
Ms. Rice?
I would think it'd be key for economic development to look, thinking ahead when it comes time to hire the city manager. That the search should be wide and long, looking at the resume of all the applicants to see what the city looked like when they arrived and what it looked like when they left. The person at the helm of this ship should really have a vision for economic development. I mean, I know what I would like, but I would want somebody who actually had some practice doing it in place. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, actually. You know, currently under the county, they have no resources to help look at businesses to help them here. They just covered over their $122 million deficit. They're in the hole. They won't have the focus that we need to have. Cityhood would provide that focus, and we would have some resources to be able to focus towards this. You look at examples like Citrus Heights and other cities that have used their resources to help renovate Birdcage Walk and other things so that you see a very successful and thriving area. Before Cityhood, Birdcage Walk didn't have Best Buy, Barnes & Nobles, Target Greatland, Lowe's, but with a little focus and energy, that city was able to help bring those businesses in because that was part of their focus. Through law enforcement and making sure that it's safe in the community, through code enforcement and cleaning it up. Also, when we form our city, when we set up our permits and other things, setting up so that it's friendly towards business so that they're attracted to our area, I think those will be extremely important for us to be able to make sure that businesses will want to be here.
Mr. Claus?
I think this touches on an earlier question about why would a conservative who professes to want less government support cityhood. And from my perspective, there are two positions that are duplicative, and that's the city manager and the city attorney. And this is where they make their money, because what we really need is a strategic plan for the area. This is where you want that great city manager. Now, I've heard stories of things like mayors of cities that send out information about how great their city is along with a telephone with one phone number programmed in it, the mayor's office. This is something where you're hiring 7 ambassadors of this community, and it is our job to tout the marvels of Arden Arcade. I just drew a blank. I'll quit.
Okay, we only have time for one more question, and
Did I
we'll
answer that question?
you're going to get the next one. Mr. Burton, you'll be first.
Maybe they'll let you.
All right, I'll sneak it in.
Much of the infrastructure in the county has been said to be aging. How would you prioritize the infrastructure projects in a new Arden Arcade city, and how do you pay for those projects without raising taxes, as some people are afraid of?
Well, like I said before, I am serve on the Sacramento County Taxpayers League, and so I always watch the dollars and make sure that our people are not overtaxed. As a matter of fact, I'm supporting an effort in the city of Sacramento right now to roll back their utility taxes over there. I'm one of the chief proponents of that ordinance over there. But as far as economic development is concerned, my involvement is the fact, like I said before, I've been the president of the Economic Development Association, and in that capacity, I helped set up a Certified Development Corporation. That Certified Development Corporation's chief job was to make sure that businesses in the community had a last resort to go to if they couldn't get financing from commercial banks. And that's one of the things that we could do in this community, have our own redevelopment agency that would loan out capital to small businesses and help them to establish in our area and keep it going. And thereby we'd have more money to do more services, and more tax dollars would be coming in to provide or meet our strategic needs.
Mr. Archer?
I'll shut up.
Revitalizing a 50-year-old community. That's the job we will have at hand. I think the best thing is first making sure that Arden Arcade is efficient and effective. The less government approach, like Citrus Heights, we've seen it before, we know it can happen. We have a expected $19 million surplus in our road maintenance fund. The best thing about Citrus Heights, 3 years ago, they set out a goal to see every one of their streets repaved without touching their general fund. They fought for grants and for federal funds to see every road repaved. We can chase after the federal funds and after the grants as a city, which the county can't do. We need to see, this goes back to the question on businesses. When we focus on revitalizing our community, like Citrus Heights has, we're going to be able to retain our businesses and attract businesses. We start having pride in our community. People didn't know where the heck Arden Arcade was 2, 3, 4 years ago. They do now. We start taking pride in our community, start focusing and being passionate about community, start encouraging our 4th of July parade, getting people out of their house into the community, and businesses will stay, and we will revitalize the entire community.
Ms. Cole?
Thank you. The first thing is that I think to replace the aging infrastructure, as Joel was saying, is that we will be eligible for funds that the county isn't, and we can replace roads and clean, For one, I'll be happy not to have grass growing in the middle of my street anymore. Sidewalks, are not pedestrian. They're not wheelchair friendly. They're not pedestrian friendly, and they need to be. Those are things, though, that through special grants and through the federal and state programs, we can get money. We can work on it. Another thing I'd like to do is underground utility poles, because when you really drive through our neighborhood and start paying attention to the overhead wiring, it's pretty awful. That would make it a much more attractive business community. But mostly, I just want to create a safe environment for people to walk, bicycle, shop, and drive. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
Pat told most of my thunder on the things that we've talked about many times. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense what we do here. My mother used to call some places honky-tonk. It doesn't look good. It feels funny. You're not going to want to live there or be there. What's happened in our community is there's been horrible planning. You walk along Whitney Avenue, you walk along Eastern Angle. I don't care about putting sidewalks in Arden Park. What I care about is, why do the kids walk one house and then all of a sudden walk in a drainage canal, then they have a sidewalk to walk on again? It's off and on. Terrible planning. I believe in what Rudy Giuliani did in New York. He said, pay attention to the little things, and the big things will take care of themselves. And that's how we got to focus, efficiently and economically, and get the buy-in from the community to make this a better place.
Mr. Harding?
We need an economic development commission composed of businessmen in the community and citizens. We need to protect our people. We need to fix our infrastructure, rebuild it. I recently had the storm drains done in front of my house, and they repaved my road the first time in 15 years. It used to be every other year. But the street next to mine, right across the way, had their storm drain canal closed rather than fixed. We don't need that kind. We need to fix our infrastructure, so we're more attractive to business community. We need to protect our citizens. A good example is the abandoned cars in Rancho Cordova. The county had done 8 or 9 cars in the last 4 or 5 years. On the first year as a city, they picked up 1,200 abandoned cars, and they made some money on that. When you start, we do have a lot of plans that aren't quite right. We need to improve the planning. But first of all, we need to also take care of the plans we already have and enforce them, like code enforcement, which is not being done right now. The Rancho Cordova car situation is a good example of that. The storm drain is a good example.
Mr. Pagos?
Thank you. How do we prioritize our public works projects? To make any decision, you have to have a good understanding of a base of kind of where we're at. So the first step I would do is to have an assessment of the current public works projects that we have, our sewer systems, our water system, and our road system, so we can make sound decisions on what to prioritize. And how do we prioritize those decisions is based on the safety of the public. So if there's some concerns that, what happened down south with the gas pipe blowing up, we want to make sure that any PG&E pipes are safe here in our community. Things like that we need to be proactive of. The whole goal is to create a community where folks can live, work, and play here in our beautiful area. How do we fund those mechanisms? Through different financing mechanisms that we can potentially get through the state and federal government, and then the city would also allow us, the cityhood would also allow us to apply for grants that we wouldn't be available to already in an unincorporated area. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the time that we have for questions. I'm sorry not all the candidates got to answer each question, but now is your opportunity to summarize your thoughts and to make a 1-minute closing statement. And we'll begin with Ms. Salter.
Okay. My vision for Arden Arcade is to build a city that supports local businesses, attracts new revenue resources, protects its citizens, and supports projects that enhance the culture of Arden Arcade. If that is your vision, then I ask for your vote, Robin Salter, on Election Day. robin.salter@hotmail.com. Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
Hi, again, I'm Matt Powers, and my commitment is to local spending control, clean, safe neighborhoods, providing enough public safety where we can go after some of the problems, hotspots, and folks who are serious repeat offenders. And using the strength of the many people you've seen at this table, we haven't been arguing with one another or putting each other aside. I think there's great strength in Arden Arcade, and I want to capitalize on that if I am so blessed as to be your city council member. Thank you.
Mr. Goff?
Thank you. I'd like to say everything we've heard tonight really comes down to a couple things. Local control of local funding generated in our area. That local funding being used to provide services for us, for our citizens. Increased law enforcement, better roads, better infrastructure, business development being done at a local level. That's what it all comes down to. Developing the sustainable businesses. That's all rooted in local control of the funding. And that's not going to start until we have the city as an incorporated body. I've been a 20-year resident of Arden Arcade, and I want to see the same things you guys want to see: safer streets. You know, I want to be able to have a entertainment corridor, be able to walk to, bike to, and enjoy the community, enjoy my community, just like you would. And I hope you give me your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Mr. Arba?
Regarding our community of Arden Arcade, on November 2nd, we will have two choices to make. The first will be whether or not we choose to incorporate as a city. If we vote yes on Measure D, we will be saying that we want control of our city, control over our resources to make the decisions that best benefit our community. If you choose to say no, you'll be returning or remaining with Sacramento County, where we don't have control over those things. I think one of my neighbors said it best when I knocked on her door. I asked her, what do you think about cityhood? And she said, I've worked for the county for 30 years, recently retired. I've seen Elk Grove, I've seen Citrus Heights, I've seen Rancho Cordova incorporate, and they're all better for it. And I want to see that here in Arden Arcade for my community. I ask for your vote as your council member because all of the decisions that I will make will be looking toward the future of our community, what is best for our entire community for its future. And I ask for your vote on November 2nd, www.arbaforarden.com or .org. Thanks. Yeah.
Mr. Wright?
I'm Will Wright, and I have managed a number of projects that required creative thinking, problem solving in my career. My last project was as a U.S. Census. It's a one-year project, $10 million. We met every deadline. We hired 1,300 people, and we came in under budget for a government program that was quite something. I've supervised professional, technical, blue-collar, and temporary staff members. As an infantry sergeant in the Marine Corps, I've handled willful, strong personalities. I can get things done. I'm not afraid of hard decisions, which there will be many. And I think that I want to be a part of making Arden Arcade a great place to live. And I again, Will Wright, I'm asking for your vote on November 2nd, and I'm at Will Vet at Comcast. Thank you.
Ms. Ossie?
Thank you for hearing what all of us had to say tonight. We appreciate your time. I want to remind you of a few things. First of all, the most important thing is that good government is local government, and that's what this is all about. Beyond that, I want to remind you that 32 cents of every one of the tax dollars generated in Arden Arcade is currently leaving Arden Arcade. To stick with that is very risky. It's really not the best thing. Then I want to invite you to www.ardenarcadecandidates.com, where each of us has an opportunity to tell you about himself or herself. That site is there for you. I'd also like to invite you to my website, which is www.maryosi.com, where you can learn more about me and also about cityhood and why it's in your best interests. In the end, this is really not about us. This is about you and what you want. What are your priorities? What is it that you need to tell us, whoever it is up here, when we become a city, is important to you? Because that's what we can deliver to you as a local government. We're not getting it now, but we will get it if we become the city of Arden Arcade. Thank you very much.
Mr. Boatwright?
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight, and thank you to the panelists for some great questions. As you can see, we've got some wonderful candidates up here. One thing we're all passionate about is cityhood for Arden Arcade. My agenda, should I get elected to the Arden Arcade City Council, will be to make sure that we get our city set up on a strong financial basis. As a businessman, I have to make payrolls, I have to plan, I have to budget. It's important that I can offer that to this city. I do not have prior government experience, but I have practical experience from a business standpoint. I also work with a lot of cities and counties in my employment in construction, working with planning departments, building departments, and I think I can offer some assistance in making those agencies more accessible to our public. I appreciate your support for my candidacy. My website is jboatwright.com. Thank you.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you for your attention tonight and for the questions, and to the League of Women Voters for hosting. Over the course of my adult life, I have run a business out of my home. I worked in procurement with the federal government, and I have overseen a staff of 80 for a testing company I worked for. I am an honest, practical, fair, and diligent person. These qualities, together with my employment history, make me an excellent candidate for for City Council, and I would appreciate you putting me there. If elected, I will certainly make every effort to meet your needs and improving your quality of life here in Arden Arcade. And to that end, I would author and or support, again, any ordinances that would improve the quality of life, but the very first one I would be a part of would be to eliminate completely massage parlors in the area. Again, I would appreciate your vote. Liz Rice for Arden Arcade City Council. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Yes on Measure D is the only way we can protect our future. By taking the reins of control out of downtown Sacramento from strangers that we don't get to elect and placing them here locally in Arden Arcade with 7 representatives that you get to choose from on November 2nd, you have the opportunity to take the reins and pick those people with your priorities. My priorities are simple. Increase our law enforcement in our community so that we can tackle prostitution, drugs, and gang violence that we've seen rise in our community. To help clean up our neighborhoods, both residential and commercial areas through increased code enforcement. To also look at investment in our community, either economic development agency to attract businesses. Also look at increasing our greenscape and other amenities to help attract people to the homes in our neighborhoods. It's a very clear choice for you. I wish you will vote yes on Measure D, and please select me as one of your candidates. Thank you.
Mr. Claus?
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum tonight, and I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for being here, and I'd like to thank you for being here. I think you can see in the room the power and energy that you get with citizen government. That's why all of us are here. So, as I told you earlier, when I first took out nomination papers, I was undecided about Measure D. And I hope that the information and discussion you heard tonight helped provide you with the same kind of information that I looked that swayed me and made me a strong supporter of Measure D. This is about our community. We're your neighbors. You're going to entrust 7 of us to make decisions for you. I hope that I will be one of those. You can contact me through my website if you want to ask me questions or read more about me. My website is sacto.com, SACTO.com.
Mr. Burton?
Yes, I've lived in the Arden Arcade area and been involved in community activities for over 20 years. I believe it's a great place to live and work. I want to make sure it stays or becomes a crime-free city. I will work to make sure that businesses are safe, that you are safe, and that your family is safe. As your council person, I will only take $1 a year in salary. I'll be working full-time. I won't be a part-time city council person. And I'll make sure that we have an open and transparent government where you can look over my shoulder or any of the other members of the city council's shoulders at any time and see what's going on. And I want to again thank the League for this opportunity to be here tonight, and I want to thank you for your vote, and go to carlburton.com.
Mr. Archer?
I'll tell you, community, after 4 years of being involved in the incorporation process, this by far may be the most important decision we make as a community ever. We can either choose to take control of our own future, have local control, put police on our streets, keep taxes down, or we can allow something else to happen. We can allow City of Sacramento or the county to continue to make our decisions. I want to be involved. If we are a city, and I think we should be, I would love for your help to allow me to be involved in that leadership. But by all means, the first decision has to be saying yes to cityhood. It has to be saying, you know what, this is about our community. We have a community. We are going to make it as strong as possible. That's first and foremost. We've only just begun. We've only scratched the surface. And I'll tell you, the last 4 years, cityhood is proved through and through every day that the potential is great for our community. And so I'm excited. Thank you.
Ms. Cole?
Thank you. I started in the incorporation committee 3.5 years ago, and I just developed a passion for seeing this through. So first thing is yes on Measure D, absolutely. My priorities, like many of the others, are public safety and also common sense government. I stole Bob's line. But that's it. Use your head, use common sense, and don't make it too complicated. Communication is utmost as a priority, too. I want to be there for any member of the constituency that wants to talk with me and hear what they have to say. As a person, I'm a very accessible person. I'm a consensus builder and a solid business background with budgeting and working with other forms of government. This is a tremendous potential, and I'd like us all to see this through together. And I appreciate the time tonight, and my email address is patriciacole4citycouncil@gmail.com. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
This is an interesting panel. We've all talked at other functions besides this. If you polled any one of these people here, I bet you to the person would say, Measure D is more important than any of us. Measure D has to pass. It's the only viable future. I've been in law enforcement this November 13th. I'll be in law enforcement 40 years. I've seen what can happen to communities. At the best of times, the Sheriff's Department had 0.7 officers per 1,000 population. Right now, we're below 0.4. The cities around us have at least one, and the city of Sacramento is 1.4. There's a tipping point where you don't recover. Look at Florin Road. We have a higher crime rate here than South Sacramento does now. This is a major decision. I'm saying vote for cityhood first and then pick your candidates of your choice. I hope I'm one of them, Bob Stevens, and we'll try to make everything a lot better for the community.
Mr. Harding?
There is a better way. Measure D returns control to our community, keeping tax dollars local so we can restore sheriff's patrols and crime prevention programs, bring back neighborhood cleanup days, and invest in recreation facilities and schools. And we can do it without raising taxes. This $300,000 LAFCO study by professionals, signed by local authorities, clearly says that we will be a viable city without raising taxes and with a yearly surplus for the first year and a $37 million to $57 million surplus within 10 years. Those who voice fear of cityhood have no study, they have no facts. They only have unsupported statements and fears. I am Warren Harding, Parks Director and Arden Arcade resident. I believe in building warm, loving communities that allow us to raise our children, fulfill our dreams, and enjoy our youth, middle, and senior years. Thank you.
Mr. Pagos?
Thank you, David Pagos. We have been given a unique opportunity here. We're being asked to shape our own future. This is a lofty task, and we need persons of values and of experience to ensure that we do not burden our residents with costly bureaucracy. I bring that experience and those values to you. I'm asking for your vote. Having been born and raised in this community, I know this community intimately. I cut my teeth in this community. Ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I've wanted to make the world a better place. I've always dreamt of representing my own community. Will you please give me this opportunity? I wanted to publicly thank my mom and dad, who are still living in the same house that I was born and raised in, and they're here this evening, for instilling such strong values and ethics in me. I bring those ethics and values to this position if you give me this opportunity. I ask for your vote. I have 3 priorities. 1 is public safety. 2 is protecting our home values through code enforcement, and 3 is holding the line on taxes. DavidPagos.com, P-E-G-O-S, and Pagos for Progress. Thank you.
That concludes our forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission, I thank the candidates and the panelists for participating. And I would also like to thank all of the volunteers who have made this forum possible. This forum has been designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with our belief that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights you have gained from this forum will aid you in making your decision. For voter information and rebroadcast times, please visit our Smart Voter website at www.smartvoter.org or the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County website at www.lwvsacramento.org. And as mentioned earlier, there is a website that all of the candidates can pose their information, and that's ardenarcadecandidates.com. The League of Women Voters is where hands-on work to safeguard democracy leads to civic improvement. Please vote on November 2nd and help make our democracy work. And now help me thank all of our participants tonight. Good job, everyone.